Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Quiz the Music Man podcast. I'm Tony Underwood. I'm the Music Man, and we're also doing this in a pretty poor video, which is, that's how we roll around here. But so this is some of the things I might say. Look at this. If you're not looking at a video, it's going to be hard to. So I'll try to explain everything as well as I can. So what do? We talk a little bit about music, careers, music lessons, life, review some gear, stuff like that. I've been getting a lot of basic questions, so if you have any questions, send them in, and they don't have to be how-tos. They can be crazy things, who's got the top-selling song, who's done this, who's done that. So today, we're going to talk about a couple things. We're going to talk about how to choose a keyboard or a piano. I'm not going to get into the ins and outs of acoustic pianos because it's a little too complicated to do it all at once, and they're their own animal. I'll just briefly speak about from the standpoint of an instructor and a student wanting to learn piano or learn to play keyboards. And let's talk about that first. And then later we'll talk a little bit about some lessons of how to take music lessons, what music's all about and what life's all about. And it's called Why Are You Doing What You Were Doing? So that's kind of a tongue twister early this morning. Why are you doing what you were doing? So, and it will involve the why, the how, and the what. So, think a little bit about your why, your how, and your what, and talk about it a little later. So let's talk about, let's say you want to learn to play, the piano or keyboards. You want to do all that, all that kind of stuff. Maybe play chords and sing along with it. Maybe learn some, Does that go? There we go. Oh, been a while since I played. So let's say you want to learn to play some classical music or some pop music or just learn to read music, and you've decided on keyboards or piano. Honestly, if you don't have a driving desire for a certain instrument, that's probably your best avenue is a keyboard. Now, should you do an electronic keyboard or a piano? Well, I think if you're starting, you have to ask yourself, pianos, and I'm not down on pianos, if everything were perfect, I would say go out and get a nice grand piano and spend about $20,000 or $30,000 and get at least a 6-foot and probably a 7-foot and a concert grand if you can, which is almost 9 foot, or maybe a little more in some. So there you have it, and go spend 20, 30 grand or more, upwards of 100,000. And that's a professional piano that you can do some things with. Now, there are uprights that play very well. No upright will feel like a grand, most likely, because the mechanisms are different. On a grand, the hammers come up from the bottom and hit the strings and fall back down, and on an upright, they usually just hinge like this or so forth. There's a big difference in that. And it feels different. And they don't all do that. Some of them do different ways, but they do feel different. And a less expensive acoustic piano, there's so many things that go into it. The wood itself has to be seasoned for years. So they take the wood, it's only probably less than, 1 out of 10,000 trees will they use, and that wood has to be stored for 5 to 10 years maybe. And if not, you have to do other things to make them. The plate really should be a sand cast plate. It has to be seasoned for several years. They cast it in iron and pour molten iron and cast this big thing that weighs upwards of 500-600 pounds, and then it sits outside in the weather for years to season. Anyway, and the enormous amount of time and effort and little things to put together the action. That's why. Now, can you get a perfectly fantastic piano for less? Yeah, you can get them for free. Most homes don't have pianos anymore, though, and if they do, they're very old and haven't been taken care of. You do have to take care of it like it's a human being. You have to give it some affection a couple times a year. You have to have it tuned, and then every so often things will have to be done, new hammers, regulating the action, repair the action, new strings. You start putting a few new strings and it doesn't necessarily always match. Sometimes you're going to get them all done. You have to, if your home is humid and damp and so forth, you need to get something to take care of it. So all these things are kind of looking like a negative, but it's not so much a negative as it is just making you aware of things you have to do. Now, if you compare that to a keyboard, you just buy the thing and you spend a few $100s and you're fine for years. And then later when the student, usually as a child, when the student grows up and goes out on their own, it's their deal. If they're going to go to college and that's different. If they show really good commitment, I would say talent, but I don't believe in that term. If they show commitment and progress, then during their middle or high school years, you might want to purchase a really good upright or a small grand that is well cared for. So that would be the main thing. If money is a thought, and it usually is, it's usually not the problem. That's a whole nother podcast. But if it's what you're basing your decisions on, I would rather you have money, a few $100s every year, to keep up the piano. So you can get a less expensive one and have it regulated and have it really well set up. And it might be you buy a piano for $1,000, have to put $2,000 into it to have a new action installed or something. And other times you can get a brand new piano. Even a brand new one usually has to have something done to it. I know most of the pianos from the bigger companies these days come out of the box ready to play, but some things you need to do to it, and it will need to be tuned every year because of the weather and taken care of. Whereas a keyboard, you just grab it. So I'm not really going to get into pianos too much. That's really a whole new thing. I will just say that if you have a nice piano, have your piano technician come out and get it regulated and get it ready to play. And if they're a player, not all technicians are super players, but if they're a player, have them play it and let them ask them, is this worth doing this, or can you help me find something a little bit better? Hopefully you'll have vetted your technician and you have some trust there. So a lot of times they rebuild pianos or know a rebuilder or get them in trade and so forth. So get someone who you trust and use their knowledge of what you have. Otherwise, I would say a keyboard. So let's talk about what kind of keyboard to get. It first depends on the student. If it's a beginner, really any age, you can do with just a small keyboard. There's three things about the keyboard that are important. One is the size of the keys. To a slight extent, the size of the keyboard, the number of keys, but it's not that important. But the size of the keys, are the keys tiny, small? And I'm going to pick up this keyboard to show. This is a portable. This only has 61 keys, but for those that are watching, you can see that the keys themselves are full size. They're around 6 to 7 inches long, and I have I would say fairly large fingers. They're not humongous, but they they work well on this. And also you can see it's not very long, and I'm picking it up, it's fairly light. And the keys, they don't have any weight to them. It's like an organ, you're just pushing it down. It doesn't have any, it has a little pushback, but not a lot. And the key itself, you can tell, is a very light mechanism. The keys probably doesn't weigh as much as a few pencils. So the first thing you look for is full-size keys. And this is I'm going to go ahead and give this brand. It's a Casio, C-A-S-I-O. They're a very well-known brand of keyboards. This is what is this called? It's a CK100, I think. CTK-1100. It's a CTK-1100. They have many different models. They change them almost every year. This has a lot of different sounds, and also, I keep looking at it and not at the screen. It has a lot of different sounds, and they're not great sounding, but they're okay. This plugs into the wall with their power cord, and also this one has batteries, so you can take it, and has speakers built in. So you're all set. It has 61 keys. A standard keyboard is 88. But you won't use those extra octaves. I think it's a couple octaves on the bottom. Let's see, no, it's one octave on the bottom that it's lacking. Well, no, it goes down 2 octaves. Oh, that's crazy. Yeah, this is one it's lacking in the bottom, and then 2 on the top. You're not going to use those for a couple of years learning piano unless you're really into it. So that's the first thing. Make sure it has full-size keys. The next thing to consider is the weight of the keys. So in other words, let me move my little video here and get my finger in it. This is the piano I use. It's a Yamaha. It's a YPG 625 or 675. And you can see that key has some weight. Actually, you can see it has some depth to it too, a little bit. See, it's wood. But it has that feel. It really has a feel to it. And the action on this is very similar to a grand. Sorry, that's a recording, a wire there. It's similar to a grand piano. So it has both weight and feel. And that's really I would say, if anything, that's probably the most important thing if you really want to give them a big jump start. But it's not really necessary for a young beginner. In fact, they might find the non-weighted keyboard a little bit easier. And plus, that's how an organ feels, as non-weighted. So it's not like professionals never play that. And you know, can you judge a good weighted keyboard by price? It's like buying wine. the more, I don't drink wine, but that's always the funny thing. You can tell how good it is by the price. The market, especially, this is such a competitive market. So if you stick with the name brands, and I'm going to name some name brands, and if I don't name one, don't get all upset. Send me a scorching, flaming comment, and I'll talk about it. It's just because I forgot. The big heavy hitters are Yamaha and Casio. Then there's Alesis, A-L-E-S-I-S, I think it is. You have some store brands, which are probably built by the people that make these keyboards. You have Williams, which I think Musician's Friend and Guitar Center sell. I think that's all the big major brands. There are some others. Now, then there are synthesizers like Korg and just thousands of them out there. That's a different animal. You can use those if it's a synthesizer has a piano built in. But those brands, and be careful if you're buying weighted keys, make sure it's hammer action weighted keys. Look for those terms. You don't want semi-weighted or weighted touch or anything that's a little off. And you can play it and play a regular piano. Now they have different weights. Some pianos are very light, some are heavy, but it's still, you can feel there's a weight. Keyboards are kind of the same, but you can tell if it's semi-weighted. There's nothing wrong with that, but don't pay a lot of money just for that feature. So if that feature already comes, that's great. And then there are also keyboards with 70, I think 74 keys, and then the 88. Now there is a piano, one in particular, a Bosendorfer Imperial Grand, has extra keys on the bass. And they usually cover them with a little cover so it doesn't psych out the player unless they know they're playing it. But most pianos will have 88 keys, and like I said, you won't be using them that much. And the thing about a piano is, if I play, and then there are some keys in the middle, I'm going to play the keys in the middle of those notes too. That's just 12 tones. I played the 13th tone, the C again. Really, that's all you need to start. And in fact, I have taught children using what's called a MIDI controller that just has those keys. And it's wonderful because it takes all the extra, it overwhelms them sometimes seeing all those keys. So don't get overwhelmed or hung up on how many keys. As long as you have 2 sets of those 12 tones, so from here for the left hand and then for the right hand, you're fine. So a 61 key will be fine. The cool thing about the portable is that later, they're around 120, 150 bucks. You can find them on sale for much less. I would hesitate to recommend an off-brand because of the sounds and the action will just be too tinny and toy-like. But around that price, the cool thing about it is you can continue to use it and you can continue to play, take it with you. It's great. Beach, take it out. You know, this has batteries, so I can take it out on the beach. You know, don't get it wet, but and I usually keep it in a case if I do that and open it up and play it, and people can sing along. It's great. You can plug it in anywhere, take it to places, and most people aren't that discerning, and even musicians don't mind. I mean, it's a nice sound. So that's your first, and then you look at weighted keys. Now after that, there's a lot of different things like connectivity to MIDI, hooking it up to your computer, and the number of sounds. Now this portable actually has 100 sounds, and it has rhythms. You can do loops. You can actually there's a song bank, so you can actually record a loop and play along with it or record stuff. That's where a keyboard and synthesizer kind of split off from an electric piano or a digital piano. Some digital pianos just have this piano sound. Some have a basic piano, organ, electric piano, and 1 or 2 other things, and maybe some rudimentary rhythms, and that's it. And then this Yamaha, I mean, it has a little bit of everything. It really, you can tell it does. If you put accompaniment on. So it's like the old school, it's like the old-timey organs they used to sell to people, and you can do all those things. And it has many different sounds, orchestral sounds, and it's over 500. You can set up guitars and things. And, the more expensive, the better the sounds. That's just kind of how that works. But don't get hung up on that either. Most people will just play the one sound. And you can, almost every piano has an out that you can at some point hook it up. Every keyboard, has an out that you can hook up to a computer and fiddle with the sounds of it. And like I said, if you buy a piano, and let's say you pay the most you can pay, whatever your personal is, you're able to get one with a good weighted keys. That's the most important for that next step up. And I would rather you do that and not worry about too many sounds, that to get something that maybe the keyboard isn't as good and you've paid a couple $100 extra for that keyboard because it has a lot of sounds. You can get a very cheap MIDI controller for $50 and a pack of sounds, and later the kids can go crazy with that and still play their piano. So that's the three things. One is the size of the keys, the actual key size. Are they 6 inches or so long, about like a big phone? And the next is the let's say 1A is the size of the keyboard, so it's not that important. But if you're an older beginner or an adult and you want to just get something you can last for years with you, I think if you're older, maybe go for the full size, weighted. That's the second thing, the weight of the keys. Does the key actually have weight when you push it? Not pushback, but actual weight to it. You'll know what I mean. It has that momentum. And the third is the number and quality of the sounds. So, my recommendation for everyone is buy more than you think you can afford. Don't put yourself out. But I've always gone, I was in I'm not even going to say what it was, but in associations of people who put their own money into this association. And when I was elected to committees and things to do things, and things take money. And, I've never been a Rockefeller, but I do what I feel is necessary. And anytime I would go to a meeting where we were going to discuss money, I would go a few minutes early and go in the parking lot and see who was driving what. And I love cars, and I'm up on cars, and I know, brand new trucks costing you $500 a month. Brand new cars costing you $350 to $550 or more. And I know where these, most of them were friends. I kind of knew where they live. I was in real estate as well. So I know if a house is worth around $300 or $1 million or whatever. And this is an association that they've committed their life to. And some of them would say, well, I can't afford that extra $10 a month. It's going to just kill me. And I'd say, well, gee, you can afford that new payment you just got this year of $600 a month. So not to slap it in their face, because I bought nice things. So let me share with you, buy more than you can afford. This isn't a time to show everybody your mastery of getting the best deal. You definitely want to be, a shepherd of your money and be prudent. But, look around, get something nice, and I'll throw out some numbers. The cheapest was going to be around $100 on sale, and that's one like the little Casio, the small one. Yamaha makes those and so forth. The next step up would be just a full-size keyboard, 88 keys, a little bit bigger, but not weighted keys, and they can start around 200 and up. A weighted keyboard, the least expensive, are around 300 on sale, and probably 4 to 5. And then up. The one I play, the Yamaha, I think is around 1,000. I'm not sure now. You can go up 2, 3, 4,000 for a Super Korg or a Super Yamaha. But the YPG has the built-in stand. It's built into the thing. Some of the others I'm talking about would be fine, but they don't have a stand. Now you can buy the little X stands. They're very inexpensive. You can put it on a table. If you have a fold-out table that's sturdy, or a desk or something. I would get the only accessories I would get is a pedal, and that's just this thing that plugs in. They look different. Some of them actually look like the old school pedal from you just press it with your foot. It plugs into the back. Sustain pedal. But that's not necessary at first. And then I would get a bench, a regular keyboard bench. They can be $20 to $50 or less on sale. And that's going to let them adjust and just get used to using a bench. And then your music books, and you need to have it in a place where it's always out. your books out, your notebooks out, or your pencil or whatever. And then I'm going to leave you by saying that the next best accessory you can get is a app to learn to read music. And the one I use mostly is Music Tutor. And there are many others. Music Tutor is free in the beginning. There's others. Do that a few times a week. You will be reading music so fast. I've had kids I've taught from little kids 5 years, and it's still a mystery to them somehow. And I was trying to figure out how to reach these kids, and I was never much of apps and things, because if you're there, but I saw this and said, let me try this. Within a couple weeks, and I just did it with them during their lesson.